My eldest daughter is a senior in high school. So over the New Year's break, my family and I visited some colleges to which she had applied. We went up north, San Jose, Berkeley, and we toured some campuses to which she applied. And as we walked around these very impressive campuses, I noticed something about my daughter's countenance that I had not seen in, I don't even remember when. I don't even remember when. And I didn't know what to call it at the time. Wonder maybe. Some might even say at that point, walking around UC Berkeley, San Jose State, all these colleges, that she was having a religious experience. For me, as a humanist UU, if there was a Google Translate for sacred words, religious experience translated into humanist might be an ultimately positive, a transformative experience of something inexplicable, often something unexpected, of awe that is active or passive, of awe which can be but is not necessarily effectuated. Are all humanists so wordy, Josh? No, just me. Let me see if I had to pick a single word to translate religious experience. This experience she was having visibly on this campus, maybe I would say she was gobsmacked. I like the sound of that word. No, wait. I would say she was moved. Moved. That's a good word for it. That's better. But whatever it was, it doesn't matter. I had not seen this expression in a while. It just amazed me. And in fact, I would bet that many young adults and children have had fewer sparks of this elusive magic energy that you see in their faces sometimes, given the times and especially the stress and strain of this year. And that's also why her reaction to being on these college campuses that I saw that day was so surprising, and it was so wonderful for me. Now, another person might not have noticed it. I don't know, maybe they would have noticed it, absorbed it, smiled, and moved on. But I'm a minister, so of course, everything is a sermon. And so here we are. I thought long about my daughter's state of being on those campuses, and I realized a few things about this energy, this magic countenance. This was happiness, and not born of delusion. And what I mean by that is, knowing her, I knew she wasn't forgetting or ignoring all the tribulations of the world. None of that was gone. COVID was still present as we all wore masks on a campus usually populated by thousands that was practically empty. The solar-powered trash cans and recycling receptacles peppered the area as a constant reminder that we're struggling with environmental issues. Remnants of flyers remain attached to those walls and kiosks, that you see on university campuses, calling for action on any number of issues, especially when we were at UC Berkeley. And none of the things in the greater society that made her stressed had gone away. They hadn't gone away. She wasn't delusional about it. She still had her senior year of high school to complete. She had the prospect of application. She had scholarships, getting along with roommates, learning to navigate a dizzyingly large campus, moving away from home, hours of studying that comes with college life. I hope my daughter isn't listening to this because she may be getting stressed. And everything else, everything else there was to anticipate with trepidation about this journey was still very present. Although I think she anticipates moving away from home, not with trepidation, but with elation. But nevertheless, I know she'll miss her mom and her sister. And her hands were cold one day. Her feet got tired as she walked, struggling to decode this frustrating campus map app that she had on her phone. So this countenance of wonder was not some altered state of mind or out-of-body experience where everything troubling just disappeared. It wasn't. It was a moment. In fact, it was many moments of just pure euphoria with complete acceptance of all of life's challenges. Indeed, I would say a determination to accept and confront these challenges while choosing to focus on the knowledge that there would definitely also be plenty of good stuff in her future. This particular state of being also resulted from the fact that this was a new beginning. just like we're having a new beginning. This was a new beginning for her. I remember feeling something similar the first time that I stepped onto the island of Manhattan to start a new chapter of my life, many, many, many years ago. So in becoming a college student, my daughter is starting over in a manner. She's rebooting. And when you reboot, what happens? Computer science people in the audience, your cache is cleared. When you reboot, unnecessary, even troublesome remnants of past experiences are deleted. Don't get me wrong, the experiences themselves stay in your memory for certain, but your system is freed of the residue holding back functionality, and you move ahead with renewed energy and positivity, like when you reboot a computer and it works better and quicker. Now, although my kid is not a computer, even though as much time as kids spend in front of the computer, I think some melding may have actually occurred, but nonetheless, she's not a computer. The positivity in that moment was at least in part generated from this anticipation of a reboot, of a new beginning, of a new start, which included an acceptance of challenges, an acceptance of things beyond her control, and a future containing surprises she could not possibly anticipate or know. She doesn't know what's going to happen, but she's looking forward to it. And it also included a greater focus, which we all need to focus on, something we all absolutely know that there would be for her, along with the challenges, many wonderful things ahead. That is for certain. To use an overused but appropriate aphorism here, when I saw my daughter's face that day, when I looked at it, I thought, if I could only bottle this energy and sell it, that excitement. In the midst of life as we know it, forever presenting us with trials as well as victories, she achieved the serenity to accept the things she cannot change. She achieved the serenity to accept the things she cannot possibly know, allowing her to welcome in the elation of those moments and welcome in the elation of the potential of the next moments. How can I recreate this energy, I thought? How can I put myself in that place? How can I help others, model for others to put themselves in that place? How can we have our own religious experiences? How can we accept and confront all of the bad head on while retaining more focus on the good, as my daughter did? And is that state limited to certain extraordinary and rare experiences, like visiting a college for the first time? That's the challenge. That's the challenge. How can we achieve that state? I'd like to propose considering renewal, just beginning again on a micro level. The meditation we just did came from an article called Starting Over Again by Taylor Plimpton. And in it he writes, reality is created and destroyed around 70,000 times each second. The Higgs boson, or the God particle, as it's known, which is considered the building block of the universe, it lasts, and let me get this right, it lasts only a millionth of a millionth of a millionth of a millionth of a second, taking tiny, ferociously fast loops into and out of existence so that the universe is continuously being reborn in every moment. Everything changes, everything passes, yes, but this also means that life is in a near constant state of refreshing in itself. And in so doing, suggesting that we can do the same, be in a near constant state of refreshing ourselves. Yes, we are offered beginning after beginning after beginning. The moment at hand right now, forever a truly clean slate to do with as we please. That's what Taylor Plimpton wrote. However, living in this constant rebooting, restarting mode, I don't think is necessarily a state of serenity. Here's the trick. There are implications when you do that, when you're restarting, that where we were was somehow bad and only where we're going is good, which is not true, and it's actually a harmful thought in and of itself. So, as we did in the first meditation, instead of restarting, which we always will be doing, by resting in the transitional space between breaths, I prefer to consider this state of elation that my daughter was in a transitional space, just like between breaths as well. It's a space simply moving from one moment to the next with anticipation and no judgment on the past or the future. That is the moment if we could rest in that moment over and over again. In fact, in reality, this origin point, that's our constant state of existence. Now, I also realize we're not all starting college next year, or we maybe not beginning anything really exciting for that matter. And there are countless people in the world that are actively suffering, far from even the vicinity of the privilege that things like higher education offers. Many people suffering beyond what I can know. So when Taylor Plimpton writes that we start with a clean slate every moment, I would add caveats that the clean slate doesn't exist on a level playing field in this world, unfortunately. And also there are people in very different and often challenging mental and emotional states. So this resting at one, this renewing is very difficult. So I'm not proposing today that the ability to find this elusive, wondrous feeling is, I've described, this serenity to be accepting in every moment is even possible, is even achievable. It isn't. However, I'm going to be a bit presumptuous today and guess that the audience I'm speaking to now does have certain privileges and opportunities, whether it's due to your social location or just the fact that we are living in this country as opposed to North Korea, for instance. I'm going to point out that one of those privileges that we all have here today is the ability to belong to a beloved community like Emerson, where we can be supported, where we can be validated. It's a blessing. It is a privilege. So, the suggestion I will make today is that when we are confronted with a moment of angst, or two, or many, as we have been recently, to refocus ourselves on our blessings and the ability that that focus provides to begin anew in the next moment. Most importantly, please rest in that space in between moments to recharge and reboot. As Taylor Plimpton puts it in the conclusion of the article, to be focused on getting back to one is to miss the point that one is right here. In conclusion, I have a UU version of a religious prediction for you today, rather than a dire or apocalyptic warning sometimes presented. It is this: my prayer, my wish, is not only for the serenity to accept the things we cannot change and the things we cannot know, but also the serenity that comes from resting, indeed truly living in each moment, knowing that the beginning is near. Today is the second in my talk on the Serenity Prayer, and I'm going to focus on, therefore, the second phrase, which is the courage to change the things that we can. However, and this month's theme is power, so power requires courage, so it fits together. And as I mentioned in my other sermon, power we must balance with love for positive change. Now, Reinhold Niebuhr, and that's the theologian who is credited with the Serenity Prayer, writing the Serenity Prayer, and it was changed a little for AA and some other 12-step programs, but his original version was a little bit different. I don't know if anyone knows what it was. He wrote, God give us grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, courage to change the things that should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about the G word later, but Niebuhr was petitioning God for courage to change the things, as you heard, not necessarily that can be changed, but that should be changed. Things can be changed for the better or for the worse. So the discernment lies in deciding what changes should be made. And a change, it may be momentary, it may be terminal, but I'd like to focus today on change, broadly speaking, greater change, positive, transformative change that is progressive over time. It's requiring ongoing effort and struggle, thus the courage to change. Brené Brown, some of you may have heard of her, is a researcher, and she showed that all change also includes vulnerability. We have to let go of safety in order to change. We have to take risks. To have the courage, we need to change what we must, what should be changed. Vulnerability is key. Or as Brown also names it, she calls vulnerability, and I like this better, loving wholeheartedly, even if it hurts. Now, in Western society, vulnerability is often equated with weakness or gullibility or fragility if you're vulnerable, but rather, according to Brown, vulnerability is courage. Brown confirms 11,000 pieces of her data, and she said, I cannot find a single example of courage, moral courage, spiritual courage, leadership courage, relational courage, not a single example that was not born completely of vulnerability. It's actually the opposite. When we become less vulnerable, when we lose vulnerability, that we become too fragile, as many in the white and privileged class have become because we're not taking risks. We become too fragile. Fragility, it leads to a host of things that define white supremacy culture, actually, that we must let go of in order to love wholeheartedly. Brown lists some. We must let go of our need for perfectionism, this idea that we're powerless, a scarcity mentality, the idea of comparing, and many, many more Brown talks about. But crucially, if we are not vulnerable enough to experience and overcome adversity by taking the risks and overcoming them, if we are not vulnerable enough to do that, have that experiences, we gradually also lose the ability to find hope that we need to overcome. We're not experienced, so we lose that ability to hope that we need to overcome. Brown writes about it, we have to take down everything we put up that was supposed to be keeping us safe. Allowing vulnerability, it takes courage, and as I mentioned in the question, in the subject today, allowing vulnerability liberates the spirit. And as a humanist, my idea of spirit, I acknowledge the collective human spirit, our collective energy of life, representative meaning that can be found in the world, in our connection to the earth, and in doing good by giving of ourselves. That is spirit. We began this worship with that hymn, Mother Earth, Beloved Garden, with the intention of facilitating this connection to our world and life upon it. And maybe as we practice the hymn more, we'll get that. You weren't here to hear it, were you? It went well. It was okay. We'll facilitate, hopefully, the connection to that interconnected spirit of life that we talk about in Unitarian Universalism. That's what we're trying to facilitate with the ritual, with the tradition, with the song. But my mind, personally, is often so entrenched in what I believe to be the truth, so afraid to lose any aspect of myself. I cling too desperately to what I believe is part and parcel to my identity. And this closed-minded desire to resist inevitable change, to resist liberating my spirit, has often stunted my personal growth. Only when I give up that safety in the conviction to be right, when I become vulnerable and am willing to be wrong, do I progress. Only then can I sit in that serenity I talked about the other week. That is the space between breaths. Only then can I sit in what Dr. Schultz talked about in your reading, in breathing, in spirit that is breath. In Hebrew, by the way, that is ruach. Some of you who are Christians might know the word pneuma, which has the same etymology. It means spirit, it means breath, but I'm on a tangent. Only when I sit in that serenity between breaths necessary to liberate my spirit enough to accept and even welcome the things I cannot change in order to change the things that I should change. Especially as a minister, I often find myself at Dr. Gregory Carroll Boyd talked about this in a sermon right here at Emerson. Was it last week about crossroads? I often find myself in a crossroads. And today, and this is an example, for instance, I am worshiping in what many call a church. Growing up Jewish, even using that word, church, let alone worshiping in one, caused me much tsuris, agita, trouble. And I don't believe in creationism. Yet my dearly beloved brother, who I respect for his intelligence and discernment, my doctor brother, is an Orthodox Jew who does believe in creationism or intelligent design. I don't say the word God, that was the G word I was referring to, when referring to my own personal theology because it isn't yet completely meaningful for me. I'm still working on it. Yet, in our worship, we routinely use the word God or similar words, Lord, and we derive from it and ascribe to it new meanings. As a chaplain, and I'm going to be a chaplain at Children's Hospital beginning in August, I must use sacred language, like that word God, and other sacred language without judgment to facilitate healing for others for whom it has very strong meaning. This is the world we live in with others. So at these crossroads that I find myself, as Dr. Carroll Boyd said, I'm presented with a choice of paths. Do I choose one I know is comfortable and easy, or one I believe is right, one that opens my spirit to growth, regardless of being in discomfort? Because discomfort means I'm learning and growing. Since discomfort requires vulnerability, it opens the way for this necessary change, the change we should be making. Now let me be clear. Discomfort, however, doesn't mean I have to give up my own theology, philosophy. Doesn't mean I have to say God, and I may not, with respect to my own theology/philosophy. I likely won't. But if I remain intransigent as far as understanding, validating, and respecting the use of the word by others, I risk not only misunderstanding and miscommunication, but I risk causing pain. I risk alienating much of the world and thus preventing change because we're not alone. We're not alone in the struggle. And therefore, true transformative change can only happen in community. And I have to transform myself to be in beloved community. I don't have to change my personal beliefs necessarily, but if I don't work to understand connections that others make, I put up impenetrable walls and I become that dogmatic fundamentalist that I condemn. So, with respect and deference to so many who I love and admire, and in the interest of the success of our movement toward positive change, I must open myself to discomfort by listening to and truly hearing others. With that in mind, I'd like to read a truncated passage in which one of our reverends, Reverend Jamie Yandel, they are a UU minister, talks about their idea of God. This is what they write. Last Friday night, 600 people from my religious faith watched an online drag show together. It was one of those moments when you realize something epic is happening. I felt joy. The drag show was heaven broken open, given to us for the evening. We were the angels, and the kings and queens were our royalty on the stage. Everything for a little while was perfect, and I saw the face of my God. Drag is the most authentic thing I can be a part of, watching or taking the stage as a king, they write. Queer people are, in fact, royalty. The early creators utilized drag for survival, and in some cases for protection. When kings and queens are on stage, their witnesses form a holy council. Here is where my God can be found, nestled in the crux of the connection of humanity. My God knows I was created for an expansive life and knows that the margins hold the most sacred and holiest parts of humanity. The margins are holy. When I witness a drag show, I'm witnessing my God and all who are present. I can feel our connection. The rhythm of life running through all of us and in all things is so obvious that it almost hurts to feel it so strongly. In that moment, all of the struggles and pain incurred from existing as a person who is non-binary are washed away in that moment, and I am made new again. That's their idea of God. You don't have to agree with it, but it's pretty powerful. And my past self, my Joshua past self, might have listened to that and honed in on 3 words. They wrote, I was created. I might have honed in on that, ignoring the rest for fear of being in agreement with creationism, which I'm not. But in doing that, I'd have missed that they also wrote, God can be found nestled in the crux of the connection of humanity, a very humanist idea. I would have passed over their description of our connection, the rhythm of life running through all of us and in all things that they wrote. I would have overlooked the fact that they repeated the possessive word my in front of God, claiming this is their understanding and does not have to be another's understanding. I would have rejected this powerful and meaningful sentiment to which I can relate for an unwillingness to sit in discomfort and thereby stunting my own personal transformation, thereby keeping my spirit captive. Back to the question I asked today was, how might spirit be liberated by using our power to create change? Well, for me, my answer to that question is that I can and should be open to changing myself in each moment, all the time. Robin DiAngelo wrote about personal transformation that we need for structural transformation. Personal transformation can be an act of anti-racism, she wrote. But especially for me, a person who is ensconced in the comforts of privilege, as a male, as a white person, as a straight cisgender person, ensconced in the comforts of privilege. And for someone like me who creates intransigent ideas to put my mind at ease, personal transformation is necessary so that I can be a part of structural change that we can make in our diverse community of communities, as Paula Cole-Jones calls our faith community of communities. If I am to ask others to validate and understand me, what I believe in a mutually respectful relationship, I must make every effort to sincerely do the same. So, once again, to put my actions where my words are, I intend to practice now the world that I want to build, the world in which no one is coerced to believe something they don't, but everyone respects with deference and works to understand what others believe, recognizing there is no place worth being that I will feel perfectly comfortable and that personal growth only comes with discomfort. I am living into that discomfort as much as I can, even claiming my identity, as I said, as a minister in a faith that came from Christianity, is doing so, is living into opening my spirit. And consequently, because I've done it, I've been introduced to Unitarian Universalism, and it has been a most powerfully rewarding experience and continues to be rewarding and meaningful for me because I moved into discomfort and vulnerability. And I commit to turning toward the further liberation of my own spirit, away from what restricts me. As a humanistic, culturally Jewish person, I admit I also do struggle with meaning-making vis-a-vis stories in the Bible. So, recently I have been purposefully exploring the story right now of Passover, because that's the season coming up, exploring my own culturally Jewish roots, which I've been able to do more as a Unitarian Universalist than I ever was as a Jew, identified Jew, religiously. In conclusion, this Serenity Prayer series that I'm doing, I've decided to use it to write my own version of the Serenity Prayer, inspired by Niebuhr's. And I'll replace the word God this time with meaning derived from our own transcendentalist namesake, Ralph Waldo Emerson, who wrote, "Within us is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one." So my version of the prayer begins, and it's still in draft. May the spirit of the whole of life, to which every part and particle is equally related, inspire us with the human grace that allows for transformative experiences of wonder and awe, moments of euphoria where we rest between breaths with complete acceptance of life's challenges, the things we cannot change or know, and recognition that we do not start from a clean slate or a level playing field, allowing us to welcome the elation of each moment and the potential of the next. May the spirit of the whole of life, to which every part and particle is equally related, move us to be vulnerable enough to continually balance the exercise of power and love to effect the change that will transform the world for the better. Okay, mine is a little bit wordier, but I can edit it down. I haven't even gotten to the third part yet, so we'll get there. So. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to talk right now about the third and the final phrase of the Serenity Prayer, in which the petitioner asks for the wisdom to know the difference between what we cannot change and what we can and we should change. In other words, to know when we can do that first step of the prayer, resting in serenity, in comfort or discomfort, and then when we must move ahead with the second step, reparative and restorative action to change with courage, when we know to do the first and then the second with courage regardless of the danger to ourselves. The wisdom to know when each step is taken. And it occurred to me that the key word in the prayer is change. This prayer is not, as I said at the beginning, a formula for right action. It is not an algorithm to decide what steps to take in which situation where you plug in the variables and out pops an answer. It is about more than everyday decisions, but rather about making often difficult and truly radical shifts and changes that are often unpredictable, that are often scary, that we have to make. So to figure out how it actually works, this prayer, I decided to take the prayer step by step. So I went back to square one, and I considered what exactly I cannot change, that I need to accept with serenity. What are these things that I need to accept that I can't change? And there are, you'll agree, some primary things which I absolutely cannot and will never be able to change. In fact, these are things nobody can change. The past. The fact that none of us are or will ever be perfect, with the exception of my wife and daughters. If I'm honest, although feelings can be influenced, we can't change the fact that what we feel is often beyond our control. And change itself, if it's worthwhile, will always be accompanied by discomfort and even pain, struggling. We can't change that. We can't. Nobody can achieve absolute control over suffering, our own or others. So accepting the things we cannot change is more about accepting we are not always in control. From there, I then considered the circumstances in which this prayer has been most effective to see how it works. And that is in the battle against addictive behavior. It's often used in 12-step programs. That's where it's been really, really effective, which according to the Betty Ford Center, addictive behavior is about giving up the quest to feel as if you are in absolute control, while taking action on what you still can control. So if this prayer's meaning is to be impactful for me, which in undertaking this sermon series, I make the assumption that it is to be impactful for me, then there must be something that I feel I can control, but in reality, I can't. I am likely even addicted to and misusing something that I consider to be a curative for my own pain. So what is my go-to drug? What is the thing that I use to alter my mood when I feel bad, to medicate my feelings when I'm hurting by trying to control situations that are beyond my control or change things that I cannot. What do I do? Well, thankfully, it's not the usual suspects. Thankfully, I'm not addicted to alcohol or some other mind-altering chemical. In fact, the thing that keeps most people hostage to this false sense of being in control is usually not a thing, drug or alcohol. It's usually a behavior. And I realize that what I rely on when I am hurting, what I have often in the past relied on when I'm hurting or when I want to turn away from potential hurt, is a behavior I have been addicted to my entire adult life. It has caused great harm to me and others. It is an addiction that only through formation as a minister and the sage and honest counsel of my perfect wife have I begun to even work on breaking. I'm addicted to problem avoidance. That's my addiction. I have often avoided taking action that I know will be difficult and uncomfortable for me. Let me be clear. Sometimes not taking action is necessary in order to rest, center, reset. Sometimes you need to do that. But then again, taking a casual drink, which I do on occasion, is relatively harmless as well. However, when taking that drink or not taking that action that's necessary becomes an escape that harms oneself and others, then it's a problem. Further, when ignoring that harm because it makes me feel uncomfortable, choosing rather to feel the fleeting pleasure that my avoidance brings, when that becomes a regular habit, it's a dangerous addiction. My name is Joshua Berg, and I'm an addict. I am addicted to problem avoidance, to the need to always be liked, to dodging difficult issues, to reclining my laurels, and in the privilege my identity affords me, even when stepping out of safety is absolutely called for. I do it. And this addiction has and still causes harm to me and others. According to the Betty Ford Center, the Serenity Prayer gently admonishes us to examine our inner selves. This is what I've been doing. I realize there's no way I can control or stop those bad feelings I get when I'm confronted with problems or conflicts, when I have to confront those things. I'm going to feel that way. However, I can influence those feelings by what I can control, my thinking and the actions I do choose to take. The final stanza of that prayer, the petitions for that wisdom, the wisdom to know what those actions are and are not, finding the peace achieved through acceptance of what cannot be changed and the courage to take necessary actions for change, and the wisdom which directs me toward right action, regardless of how difficult it is, that will break my addiction. It will bring about transformative change that I may heal myself and support the healing and freeing of life rather than hindering it. So how is that wisdom achieved? The wisdom that comes from examining my inner self. If I'm honest, I already have it. When an addict takes a drink, they are most often aware that they shouldn't be doing that. When I avoid a problem I should be confronting in order to make necessary changes, I am aware I'm taking the easy road because I can. When I do that, I'm aware that others don't always have the same choice to take that easy road. And I'm aware, but by making that choice to stay comfortable and not engage with conflict when change is necessary, I am, if I'm honest, also aware that I do harm, stifling movement toward necessary change. And I know that going through that pain, which accompanies confronting a problem, that is my only hope of improving circumstances, of making necessary transformative change. But I still, even though I know these things, sometimes choose avoidance out of fear. So using this wisdom, I have to know that painful change is always necessary for life on earth to grow and improve. Accepting that growing pains are unavoidable. So my personal serenity prayer is that I hope to muster the courage on a regular basis to confront conflict when necessary. This haircut, I know that was an odd transition. You may realize that I took a little off the top. When I first looked at myself in the mirror, I was a little shocked. I used to have longer hair. And my family saw me, and they were shocked, and they were a bit befuddled, and to say the least. But I committed to this haircut, and it's starting to become part of me. If I keep it for even a few weeks, then if I were to go back to having longer hair, that will look strange. I also know that as I have gone through the shock, as I've grown and transformed as a minister and as a person, as I've gone through that shock of confronting problems, and as I continue to do so on a regular basis, it has become more and more a part of me too. I believe we all have the ability and the power to not only accept new haircuts, change, but to engage with true, radical, world-altering change. We all have the ability. It's painful sometimes. I also believe all of us have some behavior that's probably holding us back, like mine was. And I invite you to ask yourself, what do you do to avoid change, even when wisdom to know the difference tells you that change is necessary? Think about it. Whether you're addicted to whatever that avoidance mechanism is or not, maybe it's merely a struggle you have to overcome, here is my advice in the form of my newly reimagined Serenity Prayer from the first two sermons and this one. May the spirit of the whole of life, to which every part and particle is equally related, that's from Emerson, inspire with the grace that welcomes transformative experiences of wonder and awe, moments of euphoria and fortitude, resting between breaths with complete acceptance of life's challenges, the things which cannot be changed and that which cannot even be known, with recognition that fairness is an illusion. May these experiences of awe teach the welcoming of the precious gift of life, opening our hearts to the elation of each moment and the anticipation of the next. May you find peace of mind and heart that allows you to enjoy, be grateful for, and live fully into each moment. May the spirit of the whole of life, to which every part and particle is equally related, move all to the courage that is vulnerability, enough to continually unbalance and rebalance the exercise of power and love by which we achieve transformative healing change. May you muster the fortitude that leads to necessary and often extremely difficult action to heal ourselves and consequently the world. May you access the wisdom that is already within the universe and within you to know when and how to take radical right action. May you access that wisdom that is already within the universe and already within you to reconstitute your spirit and your heart, that you may continue to act for the radical changes with which the health, safety, peace, and prosperity of all life and the world requires. Amen.